That was with Luke Dodson.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, you were just talking about. Maybe we're starting now, but we'll see. You were just talking about how the far left and the far right have a lot in common. You didn't say this, but they meet. You go far enough to one side, and you end up. How does that happen, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting because that's
different external signs and symbols, but similar in action. Very similar.
Yeah.
Ends justify the means. Accelerationism. Abnegation of conventional morality.
What about a love of technology, or at least a feeling that technology is essential to the solutions?
I think so. I think it's becoming more prevalent there. They're definitely using technology, the far left and far right. Encryption, communications. But I think that it's because of this kind of within the last 30 years, this kind of advancing technology. I think that they're definitely using that to fulfill their ideological aims. No question.
Just seeing if I can highlight you. Can I make it so that I just see you, or do I always have to look at myself?
Well, I think if you go to there should be like a series of bars underneath like our video, and you can tinker around with the different video settings right now. So you go, it's kind of, if you take your mouse and put it into the center of that screen, you'll see that option.
No, that didn't work. Well, it doesn't matter. I just prefer it. My attention gets divided between. It's like, if you had a mirror in front of you the whole time you were talking to somebody, it would be weird, right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, let's start. We have to start somewhere. So let's start with where we left off last time on the William Ramsey Investigates. Let's start with this Lavender fellow. Because part of my interest in returning to Lavender was just this more general topic of identifying untrustworthy sources and their methods and means and so on. And maybe Lavender's kind of obvious at this point, but also who they associate with and what kind of narratives they're involved in disseminating. I think you mentioned that Lavender came after you rather than you going after Lavender. Is that right?
Well, we overlapped, and then he got angry at me. I think I was putting something else about Eccles, and then he and this other character, Marco, I forgot his last name, from Italy. Pretty much, not Marco Pazzi. So he is a new Crowley book kind of came out, so he's a real kind of Dolomite, I would say. They kind of came after me on social media in a big way. I had to kind of block them. I actually told X they were harassing me. I think it was digital harassment. It became digital harassment, but X didn't see it that way, so I had to block them. Just like, personal impact. They tried to tag me as an anti-Semite. So people have tried to tag me with all kinds of stuff. But it was an interesting take. So Levenda's like, you're an anti-Semite, which I don't even know.
Why, besides the obvious that it's useful bludgeon you with whatever the words are, why did they try and brand you as an anti-Semite? What was their argument?
Well, I think it's just an effective way to kind of get attention on me. Like if you're an anti-Semite, then other people can go after you as well, right? So
yeah, but who was Jewish in this equation?
Nobody. So I don't know. It was kind of strange. I was talking to you last time. I have to go back and get those screenshots. They're somewhere around. But,
so what was it you think got their attention then, or got Lavender's attention?
It was a post on Crowley, So I think that they really came in to defend Crowley and Eccles. I might have to jar my memory. Let me see if I can find them.
Right, Eccles.
Yeah. So Eccles is definitely Crowleyite type. So let's see if I can find him on.
Because you spent a long time on the Memphis 3.
Yeah, that was a long time ago now. 12 years ago was when I wrote that book. That was 2012. But yeah, I'd have to go back through. I have like 9,000 posts now on Twitter, but I gotta go see.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. I mean, not right now anyway. It'll be very distracting. So how long did it play out for? Not very long.
Oh, it was like a battle, and then people came in, and it's kind of like a pile drive, like they bring in their other resources. And I think actually Lavenda popped in because I was like, "This is the best you got," and then Lavenda ships up, so start arguing and stuff. So
yeah. Do you remember any of his arguing points?
I don't know. I have to go back and look. I really have to go back and get all that stuff.
Okay.
Now that you're interested, I mean, let's see. I had an let's see. I think that there's an interesting interaction between Dave McGowan and Lavenda. They had some kind of squabble. And I've had a few squabbles with Lavenda. Like they, just kind of, our outlook is different.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty much in the Christian camp and he's in the occult camp. So those are two things that really should never meet. So. And his friends and his associates it's obvious you want to talk about this. DeLong, Secret Machines, To the Stars Academy, TTSAs, and they're the pro UFO, worldview. To start, we can go back to Lavenda. Lavenda actually has very interesting kind of background, all the way back to the Magical Child in New York City, where overlaps with Son of Sam, and also this kind of like non-official. Which he was a member of. I think it would allow. It's kind of interesting because it comes back around with RFK Jr. aligning with Trump, because I think that Lavenda used his status as the old Orthodox Church, which isn't an official church, right? It's not sanctioned by true Orthodoxy or the Catholic Church, but he used his kind of fake or ersatz or plastic kind of ordination to get into Robert F. Kennedy's funeral, right? When Robert F. Kennedy got killed in 1968. So actually kind of interesting, yeah. And it was interesting too, because around that time is when David Ferry, who was, around the assassination of JFK in New Orleans, and definitely was one of Oswald's handlers, was a member of this kind of old Orthodox church. I've done a show with that, James Day, who kind of goes into this kind of thing. And it's not, if you're not part of those kind of traditional Christian sects, I guess, SECTSs, it's not as important, maybe not as important to you, this ordination, because it gives you the official powers of the Catholic Church or the Orthodox Church, right? So to not be allowed in it, this is their way around that for people. Ferry had a real serious kind of moral issue that why he had to kind of leave the Catholic Church and wasn't ordained, which is his predilection for teenage boys. That was kind of his deal. But I don't know why Lavenda, that's an open question for me as far as Lavenda, why he went that route of this kind of alternate appointed thing. And he actually talks about it in a couple interviews, I believe. He understood it, that it gives you this outer look to the public that you're a member or some kind of important member of one of these standard church organizations, because to most people it's almost like a stolen valor, like in the military, where you can put on these kind of like military uniforms with the proper regalia and kind of fool 99% of the people. But the ones who've been in the military, it stands out like a massive red flag. These guys are stealing people's valor. Like they don't wear the clothing, the badges in the right spot. And their frame of reference is terrible. So I think that's almost like a stolen valor within the traditional, I guess, Orthodox or Catholic churches, is this kind of like old Catholic church or old There's different variants. That's what's really complex. Different names that look legit. But anyway, Lavenda's part of that. That's one aspect of his character that I find interesting. Also, his kind of internationalism, working all over the place, going to China. And, I think he was in that kind of OTO ritual. I mean, it's a video of that guy.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's
and then, I think the rumors of him being Simon.
Well, it's more than rumors. Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I reposted my chapters from Vice and Kings about that. Like, his name is on the copyright for the Simon book, and if you slow down a recording of Simon, he would distort his voice by slowing it down. But if you speed it up, you can hear it.
That was on Coast to Coast, right?
Yeah.
Coast to Coast recording. Yeah.
So I don't think he's even bothering to deny any of this stuff, really. And he still denies being an operative. He doesn't deny being an occultist anymore. He just says, I won't talk about it. The religious background, I haven't looked into it at all, but I know that he has Jesuit background. Like, he was in the Jesuits from young age. I don't know the specifics. So, and I don't know enough about the organization of the church. So, but presumably that
Jesuits are kind of like God stormtroopers of the Catholic Church, right?
Well, there's
different orders within the Catholic Church, right, that are allowed under the umbrella of Catholicism, and the Jesuits order of I forgot the founder's name was almost like Catholic, right or wrong, like whatever's black, whatever the Pope says we do. So they were always the most fervid, avid people involved in all kinds of stuff. And then particularly if you're a Catholic, you want to go to a Jesuit university or high school because that's the most rigorous. Like, they're the most, the idea of the Catholic, strong man with a ruler who beats the crap out of you is Jesuit type stuff.
Right. And what about the wandering bishop thing? Because I don't quite know what that is, but
that overlaps with what I was just saying. I think that this old Catholic Church orders are these different orders that aren't officially sanctioned by the real church. Though that's the wandering bishops.
Right. So he's a bit of a chameleon. Whatever he can wear that will suit his purposes. Because of course I encountered him as a fellow conspiracy researcher. I was never that impressed by Sinister Forces, but they were all right. They were a good resource of sort of chronological information. But I knew he was respecting the community, so I spoke to him back in stormy weather days, and then again for the Limblers, and it was just clear he was very well informed and very intelligent. That was as far as it went, and then all of these strange. I think it was listening to him talking to Whitley Strieber, and the more and more I became aware that Whitley Strieber was not what he seemed. I mean, I don't know how much you've looked into Whitley Strieber, but that guy is bizarre. I mean, He just claims everything, including, did I work for the CIA? I don't know. Did I? Literally, he's just all over the place. But I'm pretty sure he did work for the CIA, and he kind of knows it, but he kind of, he's damaged. I think Strieber. And Lavender seems, if anything, Lavender would be more like a handler. I don't know if it's the difference between a handler and an asset. Maybe is that the correct terminology? But Strieber is somebody who doesn't seem to quite realize that he's useful to these operations. And Lavender comes in and sort of, when they interact, because they've had a long-standing relationship, Lavender just seems much more, cognizant of what's really going on in this relationship, just as the To the Stars thing is just kind of obviously hokey, right?
Right, yeah, super hokey. Not a lot of actual tangible information, but a lot of talk, a lot of interesting people, a lot of connections. Elizondo, a lot of spies.
Yeah,
it reminds me of that book, Spies, Kooks, and what is it? UFOs, Spies, and Kooks. I can't remember the author, but how Intel is all over the UFO story, going way back, really from the beginning. I think even Guy Bannister of the JFK situation was involved in an early UFO hoax in the 50s, before JFK. And Bannister was good friends with Ferry, so I think that the Intel people have been all over this kind of stuff. But yeah, TTSA. Wow, yeah.
So, I mean, Lavender, he is an interesting case study because this strange intersection between occultism, ufology, and intelligence operations, he's right there. Like he's in all three camps pretty obviously, and yet he's managed to maintain the guise of being a neutral observer.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. It seems like that's the case.
Yeah.
Saucer Spooks and Kooks, UFO Disinformation in the Age of Aquarius by Adam Go. People should listen to that because it just shows how much mythology's there and intel as well and a lot of this stuff. A lot of fake actors, like he goes to this guy Schneider, who was supposedly like a revealer, and there was these big underground tunnels. The guy was flat out crazy, cut off his own fingers, and was like a total schizophrenic. But in some parts of that community, he's legit. But,
well, doesn't it raise the question? I mean, don't you always find yourself asking the question, like, how we say legit, how much the people who are proposing and propounding these ideas actually believe in them, or they're just acting, right?
Right. Very good. It's a great question. I mean, it's like you can go down how we're profiting, right? Like there was this guy Corey Good who I kind of followed 6 years ago, or really kind of keyed in, who said that he was a contactee and a member of the secret space program and all this stuff, and like he generated a lot of income, and then he had to go to court. I think this year there was a deposition. He's like, "Oh yeah, this is just stuff from my book." So he kind of like dodged the question whether he really believed it. And to me, in my opinion, he was clearly just making it all up. It was fiction in his mind, but he was imparting to his audience that it was real.
Right.
So how many of these guys are like that too? How many guys are making money? And there's a lot of money in the ufology. It's its own like subset.
Yeah, well,
we can get into Greer. Like Greer is another guy with occult hints and intel hints, and he's all over the place.
Stephen Greer's pretty obvious, though.
Yeah.
He's kind of obviously fishy.
And the entities, and then to go overlaps, you've talked to Charles Upton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've talked to Upton too. So it's like, are these guys and Strieber, are they promoting these entities or as UFOs? So it's the whole story. And Strieber is super sketchy. Another interesting thing about Strieber is he overlaps with John Mack, who's friends with Mack, who's in like one of the real kind of intellectual investigators of the UFO phenomenon and contactees and stuff like that. And they knew each other, and it's kind of, and there's an interesting picture of Mack, Strieber, and Lawrence Rockefeller sitting together and kind of having a powwow. And if you look at Lawrence Rockefeller, or the Rockefeller family of the money, the brothers all kind of had different character. There was Winthrop who went to Arkansas, died young at 60. David, kind of the brainiac, economically more sophisticated. Nelson, who was the political guy, tinkering around in South America. But Lawrence was really kind of the cultural guy. And there's a sister there too. But Lawrence supported a lot of the stuff. Esalen, Mack, maybe even Strieber. And people haven't done enough research on Lawrence to see his cultural influence. There's a picture of Lawrence with Hillary Clinton, for example, as well. But he was really a culture agent, a culture creating agent with the cash, right? Almost like Hitchcock or from the Mellon family, kind of supporting Leary.
Yeah, well, wasn't it Nelson who was supporting Terence McKenna for a time?
Oh, I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that.
It was one of the Rockefellers, so it sounds like it was probably that one.
Yeah, maybe it's Nelson, or I would assume it's Lawrence.
Oh, Lawrence.
That's a real field of inquiry, because not a lot of people in maybe the alternate media or the whatever you want to call it, conspiracy, have looked into that, about how these guys are getting financed and who's financing them, and how it's kind of a web. I think We talked about Creepall, right? He wrote a book on Esalen.
Yes, I don't know. Have we talked about Creepall? I mean, Creepall. I call him Creepall. It's Striver.
Kripl, right?
Well, it's Striver, not Striver, and I think it's Creepall, not Creepall. But Creepall suits him better. So what? Yeah, carry on. I mean, I was definitely going to bring up Creepall at some point. He's Rice University. Eric Davis, you may know, he studied under Creepall recently. Do you know Eric Davis? Yeah. Also, he's got a certain reputation, and you could say promotes psychedelics and so on. But he's also, I think he works for or with MIT, which seems to be a bit of a hub as well. And then there's a publisher in Britain. I'm going to forget the name now, but they published Eric Davis' latest book, which is called High Strangeness. It's Mark Pilkington. Do you know that guy?
Yeah, I actually interacted with him over Skype. I asked him for an interview.
Oh, yeah?
And he started that. He was the one who did that other documentary. I asked him to come on my show to talk about that documentary he did.
The Mirage Man.
Yeah, Mirage Man. Yeah. So we talked. I chatted with him. He was very nice. He just said he moved on into publishing.
Yeah. So he did do an interview.
He did not. Oh. I just communicated with him.
Right.
Let me see if I can find it. I can't find High Strangeness on Amazon. Weird.
I'm pretty sure.
Right, Eric. ERIK, right?
High Weirdness. Yeah.
There we go. MIT Press, is that right?
Yeah. Well, they're linked, but this is the small publisher that Mark Pilkington runs that did High Weirdness, but in tandem with MIT. I submitted to MIT actually because they seem reputable. Well, obviously they're reputable, but I mean they seem like, and same with Mark Pilkington's press. This is kind of the point, if there is one, of what we're talking about here, that it's very hard. There isn't a clear line. Like you're saying, occultists and Christians shouldn't mix, but I mean, I'm neither. I'm definitely not an occultist, but I don't self-identify as Christian. I definitely seem to be more in that camp because it's to do with a kind of moral standard and a value set, and there are a lot of things that mostly I feel that you can only trust Christians to have that kind of sense, but it's not, as I said, it's definitely a spectrum, and it's bringing back to this other point. It's always a thing of curiosity for me is how wittingly are people involved in spreading kind of irresponsible journalism about these things, like psychedelics, for example. It's not proven that psychedelics lead to possession by entities, but I think there's definitely a good case to be made. UFOs, it's not proven that they're right, and so on. Right? So there's definitely people who are just they don't have the discernment, in the Christian framework. Discernment of spirits is really essential, but not in the field of academia. It's not.
Right. And discernment is like a common theme in Christianity, trying to figure out, what's real, what not to do, stuff like that. So I think you kind of have this preset kind of lens at looking at these things. Maybe people who haven't made their way through the New Testament or Old Testament don't have. Let's see. I talked to Pilkington in 2022. I asked him for an interview with Phil Baker, City of the Beast. He published a book about Crowley, but they politely declined. Hi, William. Thanks for getting in touch, but Phil won't be available for interview. And then we kind of said, and I realized his name. What had happened is, I sent it to him. I said, "Hey, Mirage Man was great, by the way. I just realized that was you. That you were you." That's what he said. So I didn't know that email went to Pilkington. So that was a couple of years.
So was that book? Was it sympathetic to Crowley?
Yes.
Yes. So you wanted to talk to him, and you would have been challenging him, I suppose.
I would have said his point of view. The other thing is that Mark the Phil Baker, I kind of wanted to get in touch with him because he'd also written a biography about, oh, geez, who's that guy who was friends with Ian Fleming, who was like a novelist who wrote Interview with the Devil. What was it? Devil Rides Out.
Wheatley. Yeah, Devin Sweet.
Yeah, so Baker had written a bio about Wheatley, who I'm very much interested in.
Right.
So I've had people who are kind of more pro Crowley sympathizers, and let them talk.
Right. Kaczynski, did you try to talk to Kaczynski?
No, but I read his book. I read, what was it? It was Perturabo, so I'm familiar with him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good on you. I find it very hard to want to talk to people who are just apologizing for Crowley and not just want to, confront them.
They're all expurgating all the troubling aspects of Crowley. And I think a lot of the sophisticated ones, like Lavenda, are knowingly doing it.
Yeah.
So it goes back to your theme, like what you're talking about. How honest are these guys in the public? And why are people taking them as honest, kind of see-through, researchers, people trying to get at the truth just for the truth's sake,
Yeah.
Some people have an agenda. There was the other guys that I'm not going to mention his name, but there's other people who've kind of entered into maybe the alternate media space and with agendas, or are flat out disinformation agents. Like they're clearly skilled, trained. You can't quite call it PR because it's more than PR. It's really kind of perception shaping skills about how to this is the facts we're going to emphasize. We're not going to emphasize this fact. You could call it PR, like Bernays type PR maybe, but it's something more sophisticated than that. They're in the alternate media. They're almost everybody in the old legacy media is like that, but I think since the kind of culture shift into the real kind of thinking is taking place in the alternate media, that's where the kind of much more of the PR people are around. I have had to fight off PR people from time to time and block them. They just are unrelenting. They're unrelenting because they're probably getting paid. So
sure. So what kind of subjects then? Because you've been doing, how many years have you been doing podcasting?
I published Prophet of Evil in 2010. And they really didn't have kind of a podcasting concept back then. I was doing interviews, just audio interviews, we were really early with other. I remember I did one of my early ones, Future Quake with Mike Bennett in 2010. Also Visigoth, which is still.
I remember Visigoth. He's not still around.
Yeah, you did an interview with him. I have his archive, so I have all of his. I have 800 different interviews of his in 5 volumes of his archive, which you can see.
He's still doing it?
No, I think he's pretty much retired. I'm just kind of off and on in contact with him, but I've done interviews with him where I'm the host and he's the guest. You can see those on William Ramsey Investigates. But yeah, so I wouldn't say that I was a real podcaster. I say I really started podcasting as a host. Well, I started being a host on YouTube in 2018, and those were my kind of earliest where I flipped kind of the script, right? Became a host. And I interviewed you, and then I got censored in 2020 after this current junta stole the election and had all their assets kind of censoring everybody, which is really a first in American history, which is totally unconstitutional and is an embarrassment to the legal profession, of which I'm a member. But then when I got censored off of YouTube, then I flipped everything and took my audios and put them up on podcasts. And then the COVID hit, right? So it messed up jobs and everything like that. Mm-hmm. So then I really, really became kind of a podcast host in 2020 or 2021. So I've been really grinding for 3 years. So that's kind of my whole career trajectory.
But weren't you doing it via Opperman before that? Or was that
right? I worked for Ed for 3 years, or 3 or 4. I was his kind of just like an online booker, like a guest wrangler or something. So I called myself a producer. He let me call him a producer. It was fun. I like working for Ed. I never really thought I would be that, but it put me in contact with a lot of people. And Ed and my sensibilities are very similar, even though our economic kind of outlook is different. I mean, I think Ed's an avowed socialist.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
So, which is kind of strange because I think he makes money off of his podcast, but we got along fine. People said he had a bad temper or something like that.
Yeah, I've heard.
He was always nice to me.
I've heard
I wouldn't have worked for him for all that long a time if there was anything wrong. I was the one who got pissed off with him because of all those riots that happened in 2020 that to me were just freaking outrageous and are still outrageous because nobody in the kind of police forces put an end to it. And those urban centers decayed, and everybody's okay with that, and it's so strange.
Well, not everybody.
Well,
I mean, there's a whole bunch of people who aren't. I certainly know.
Good point.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's kind of why me and Ed ended. Is
right.
Really because of me. It wasn't him. He probably would. He would like the free labor. I would assume he probably like me having to work for him. Like,
what, you weren't paying? He wasn't paying you?
No, but I wasn't working that. I mean,
so maybe he's that kind of socialist then. He just doesn't want to pay, but he doesn't mind getting paid.
That's funny. Good point. Well said.
Right.
Yeah, maybe I'd work like off and on 2-3 hours a week, maybe not. So I wasn't like. It was just at that time it was fun because like I was talking to people that I was making contacts with, who I was interested in. I was like, hey Ed, do you want to talk to this guy? He just published a book. Do you want to talk to this guy? And it kind of like also was an insight on how territorial, I don't know if parochial is the right word, but like you could only go on Ed's if you were on the left. So like if you were left and the boogeyman was out there, then Ed's the right host for you. And like Ed's like, well, I can't talk to that guy. He's too far right. I was like, why? This is ridiculous. If you are an adult, you should be able to win every argument with anybody you talk to with your ideas, right? They couldn't do it. And so the same thing happened to me too. I mean, I'm talking too much, but like the same thing happened to me is like people won't come on my show if they can't figure out my politics because my politics aren't as obvious. Like I don't have like I am a Republican.
That's right. Well, maybe we'll get to that in politics. Because I like to say I don't have any, but it's pretty hard these days because people will assign them to you. But that's very surprising about Opperman because, I mean, could he possibly still be left at this point? Because left has been so discredited. He is. Yeah. So. Does that mean he's woke then, in quotes? Has he gone woke? I mean,
I don't think he's really that woke. He doesn't seem to have bought into it. I can't say I follow his show a lot. Like sometimes I'll check out and see what he's up to because like we have similar interests. So I'm like, what guests does he have?
It just seems that in this field, if we're going to just define it somewhat to conspiracy, let's say, that is limiting it quite a bit, but not that much really. It's a pretty broad subject, as we know. Then you're much more likely to be on the right. I mean, how many left identifying? I don't identify as on the right, but I would probably get identified as that. I haven't really been because I think I'm pretty hard to define. But how many conspiracy researchers identify as being left these days?
It's a really good question.
Right?
Hard for me to think like they're overt leftists.
I mean, because it does. Sorry, this is the subject I thought I wanted to get into with you because it more and more it seems to me that conspiracy research has been sort of co-opted by the right in some way, or it's been like initially it was being identified with the right wing as a way to demonize it. I guess I'm going to say that word because it's my podcast. The people who are conspiracy researchers have more and more identified with the right, and they've kind of claimed that term for themselves now, and so it's gone from a term of abuse to a sort of badge of honor. I'm on the right more and more. I mean, even just in the last few weeks, particularly in the UK, obviously stuff's going on in the US around you know who. I mean, obviously the election's coming up. That it's getting more and more like if you're intelligent and sane, and you have to be on the right. That's what it's. As I say, I don't think you need any kind of political affiliation, personally, because to me it's all a con job. But many, if not most, researchers I talk to, they seem to be, if not actually advocating for right-wing stuff, at least sympathetic to it.
Yeah, I don't see too many coming out really like in this kind of woke ideology. They don't like promote that. So maybe the left has changed and gone into some kind of other Luciferian worldscape and left. I mean, there's kind of like these funny memes where like the left has gone so strange off into another thing. It's left like the traditional leftist of like free speech and civil liberties kind of sitting alone.
Oh, gone, yeah.
So it's kind of strange too, because those kind of values were considered left, like less state, civil liberties, constitutionalism, and the right was seen as authoritarian, and now it's kind of strangely inverted.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the left. So those principles and terms, they're in flux. They're not static. So I think that maybe people are just avoiding defining themselves as that. But I would say the current alternate media is more libertarian. There may not be big L, capital L, libertarian, but more of like free discussion, open, not censorship. I think those are kind of the best values. I would say I try to inculcate those kind of values into my podcast, but I don't see a lot of woke. So I think the left has changed and morphed so much that it's really not the same left.
Sure.
So I mean, it's kind of like these old people just became right. Like, so those terms, I'm not sure those terms are
useful.
I don't think they're useful at defining reality. I'm not sure they're useful at defining reality.
No, I would agree, but it's just when we were trying to analyze the landscape, that's why I kind of made the proviso people who identify as, because I don't necessarily want to use it to identify anyone, but if they self-identify, and I have noticed more self-identification on the right, like I say, even in the last few weeks, like, Sarkon of Argyle or whatever he's called, Carl Benjamin, that guy, he's I actually did an interview for Lotus Eater, so I've been in their studio and everything. So they seem, like a good group and all that. But he's tweeting currently that because of what's going on in Britain, no matter how far right a government, we need it. We need whatever government is going to deal with this. It doesn't matter how far right they are. That's what we need, right? So, and that seems like that's just an example, right? So I think it has to do with
I think like it's a problem with the West. Like the global West is basically being invaded. And if you don't want your kids to be raped or stabbed, you're a far rightist. I think that's totally crazy. Exactly. I think that's the left characterizing the desire for safety and peace and harmony as far right. Like so. Right. So that's why another reason why those terms are ridiculous. I have children, so I want my children to grow up in a peaceful, harmonious, nurturing environment that's conducive to human life.
Yes.
It's like the governments here don't care. Like here, you have this guy Mayorkas who's like, like criminals, Venezuelan gangs, who cares? Like there's no real law. And the Constitution here in the United States prohibits invasion. So these guys are unconstitutionalists. And it doesn't make me Adolf Hitler. It's a joke. It's just another mischaracterization from the left who's irresponsible with their words and terminology and their rhetoric. It's very irresponsible.
Well, the question is, are they left, though?
Right.
Fall into the same trap, right? And so, everything I think you said is just sane and logical. I was having the same conversation yesterday with somebody in Britain. But kind of to the point that I'm making, that if you are just wanting your country or your town to be habitable and not overrun with knife-wielding Muslims.
Or machetes, like in
machetes. Yeah. By the way, I could go to jail for talking about this now if I was in Britain. So that's what the stage it's got to, if people don't know. If people identify you as far-right because you just express these sane and rational opinions, or statements of fact even, then of course it's tempting to self-identify as far-right, right? So I think there's a sort of trap in there, which, and then at a more complex level, and this is kind of the theory that I'm working on, is that maybe they have the left, in quotes, to destabilize society, to get everything so messed up and topsy that then the right wing moves in to restore order, and it's a kind of 1-2 good cop, bad cop setup. That's the thing that I'm wondering about, because it's looking more and more like that, particularly in the US. If I was politically oriented, if I had any belief in the electoral system or political leaders, I probably would be sympathetic to Trump. He looks so much better than the alternative. And because of what we're talking about, like when somebody is at least talking realistically about stuff, you tend to think, okay, well, that's definitely the better option. But what if we're being set up? What if people are being set up exactly in this way? You create something like woke that's so deranged and demented that you're absolutely begging for the solution to that. But that's the original intention, right? Is the agenda that people welcome.
It's dialectic, right? Yeah. I don't know. But it's interesting how it's played out, kind of in different cultures, civilizations, Germany, and I mean, Weimar flipped all the way back. Weimar was almost like what it is today, like this depraved sexual stuff and culture and transgenderism, and then whoosh, you go back and book burning, and they burned all the stuff from these weirdos like Hirschlag, whatever, which are like all over the place now in the United States. So how do societies maintain kind of a cohesive path, like a straight path, without having to veer on both sides of this kind of spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's planned or plotted, like, is even a scarier thought, but it definitely happens, right? So like you have the revolutionary wars, you're in Spain, right? So you have the kind of like civil war, you have these kind of leftists, and then Franco takes over. Everybody's happy. Franco's brought stability, safety, harmony, for whatever. For he's obviously a fascist, but people are like, hey, I don't want this people fighting and shooting and a bunch of like nuns and priests getting killed and all this weird, crazy stuff, So
well, Franco is being sort of reevaluated. I don't know about in Spain, but certainly people who are becoming more and more aware of how pernicious the sort of leftist spirit of revolution is are beginning to look at Franco differently now. Right? Maybe those extreme methods were necessary when you're dealing with something that destructive to the social fabric. Right?
Right, good point. I mean, same with Hitler. Hitler's in the same thing with Franco. They're allies, or Mussolini. Like they're fighting. People forget all this kind of like thing. Hitler's obviously bad, terrible for his country, but like they're fighting against the Marxists and they're fighting against the communists.
Right, but they say Hitler was fighting against the Jews, right, with the Weimar Republic, and that really is a growing thing now. Not anti-Semitism, because I'm not going to fall into that trap, but an awareness of how pervasive and effective a certain Jewish presence or influence has been in society. It's very hard to identify. They're saying
on the left, most of the leaders of the left here are Jewish, especially in the Biden administration. The functioning people, the smart ones who are functioning and operating it are Jewish. Like Biden obviously is brain dead. Kamala Harris has a two-digit IQ, and they've kept it secret almost all the way up to the present. Like people haven't focused on it, but she was always an idiot. She's always been a diversity, inclusion, and equity loser. Like she's an idiot. So the real brains here are Jewish. I mean, there's no question about it. You can call me an anti-Semite, but I'm just pointing out the obvious. And they say the real guy who's running the country is Zaintz, who's a Zionist and is the brains and the chief of staff. So he's kind of has his little Shabbos Goy guy just like sleeping all day, and he can make all the decisions. It's really optimal because you don't even have to run for president, right? If you've got some goon up there, you can just make all the decisions. Say Biden's made a decision. I walked in, he's brain dead. I think Biden's dead, actually. I think it's pretty evident that he's either on life support and they have a dummy or something. They have like at least 3 or 4 different people. When they brought him out, this guy was like freaking 6'2", Like he was way too tall to be Biden. So, I mean, I'm not being fooled by that. It sounds crazy. No, he has a double. It's almost like Musha or something like that, like freaking Japanese cinema. I mean, the U.S. is so messed up. You think it's bad in the U.K.? It's so bad. Well, getting to the Jewish point, a lot of these guys are Jewish. The left has always been overpredominant. One of the strange things in the U.S. too is usually the Jews are almost overrepresented in the left, but here in the United States, because of kind of a much more generous kind of sensibility, there's a lot of Jews on the right, but they have kind of similar interests. But yeah, so I mean, Hitler's fighting against the Jews and the Marxists, who are like a lot of Jews, and that's like this whole like cataclysmic war they had was this kind of National Socialist view against the Bolsheviks, right? So a lot of Germans had that worldview. A lot of them, certainly the Nazis, but I think I think getting back to your general point of like this kind of like seesawing far right, far left stuff, like why can't we just maintain like a steady course? You know, why is there always some kind of undercutting or revolution or these really crazy? I mean, here it's so gender affirming care is gender annihilating care. It's the opposite of that. Like, why are these principles showing up really in my lifetime? Like, I'm 55, we're around the same age. Like, this didn't exist back then. When I was a kid. I remember watching very wholesome cinema growing up, 10 Commandments, you know, like really mild stuff on TV. And it took one generation to just destroy that culture and turn my children's lives and the children of other people's into kind of unknowing to them. It's a Luciferian hellscape. Took one generation.
Well, I'm not sure if it. I mean, did it really only take that, or was it just that it became visible? Because in the UK, that's where I've done more mapping of the history with the Fabian Society. You can see that plans that are really coming into fruition now, but became really obviously what you're talking about, like from one generation to the next in the 60s, with the promotion of sexual freedom. Let's just keep it kind of neutral. That's not neutral, is it? But sexual licentiousness, that's a bit more neutral. That was actually a 60-year plan or something. It took about 60 years, even though it seemed like it all happened in a generation. But no, it's like, you know, and then another 60 years, and it's brought about pretty much the collapse of the society. I mean, Britain is on the verge of the whole society is just about to collapse, it seems, because I can't see what else has happened besides the forces of totalitarian order coming in and just clamping everything down, which presumably is also what will happen, but they're sort of complementary, you know, the collapsing and the it's my cat.
But who would have thought the UK would have collapsed like a generation ago? The US is on the verge of collapse too. If Kamala Harris we could just get nuked by the Russians. Like, I mean, this whole war against Russia, it's really a war against Russia. The US is financing it. And nobody's at the helm. It's like incredible. Like the Titanic is going to go straight towards the iceberg. It's not going to glance off it. We're going to, and they do. I mean, we're not even talking about the debt bubble. So, yeah, the UK and the US are in kind of a fugue state leading up to disaster. If we go off a cliff. Like, I don't know how the UK can extricate itself out of it.
No,
they're going to steal the election. So I think that they're gearing up to steal. They're trying to make Kamala Harris look like she's a real contender. And it's total pure propaganda. It's actually beyond Orwell. Orwell could never have envisioned the level of propaganda they're putting out right now. It's totally pervasive. It's worse than Soviet Union. So, like, it's societal. The U.S. could literally bifurcate and fall apart almost like a civil war, where it's really, but it'll be different than the American Civil War of the 19th century. It'll be a urban-rural kind of battle. Because really, the U.S. is at the majority of the land and territory of the U.S. is really at the whim of like very small urban centers in the U.S. And some people may not. Yeah, there's a lot of guns here too. Like, it's different than the U.K. Here, people like once they get to the point where the government isn't working for them, the consequences of that will be way different in the U.S. than the U.K.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking about this yesterday, the difference, because the US is a huge country and there's a huge number of people in the US who simply aren't on board with any kind of wokenomics, or whatever we can call this, with this seemingly leftist agenda. Whereas in the UK, I mean, there's still a hell of a lot of people, but it's a much smaller place. And so therefore, this minority popular, like for Brexit, for example, anybody who lived in London practically voted against Brexit, but it still wasn't quite enough for the rural people of Britain to swing it. But they didn't care. They just kind of carried on as if Brexit hadn't happened. I mean, there are certain things that's quite annoying living in Spain, actually, because it's so hard to get mail now. And, there are things. But in terms of the agendas that the government wanted to keep pushing, they pretty much carried on. I don't know enough about it, whether Brexit was a genuine populist thing, but the main point is that they didn't really care, because as long as they've got control in London, the main centre of power, they're not too worried about a revolution, right? Whereas in the US, you do have these huge area and these millions of people. So
320, 340 million, just huge.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if, I mean, this is my thesis, but theory, and I'm still working on it, so it's going to be very raw. I'm thinking Trump's going to get in. I think they're actually backing Trump now. If we say they as the so-called deep state that supposedly hated Trump, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I think if they did, I think they're shifting to Trump. That's what it looks like to me. Because there's no way the Kamala Harris thing. I mean, not even the Democrats are going to believe it if she wins, because she's so pathetic, right?
Yeah, she's a joke.
So
she's
and then
a loser. You have to be a loser to take those kind of things and be a career kind of get ahead with really no real skills and no intellect.
And there's so much in. I mean, I'm just looking into it, like Trump's camp. It's. I mean, I don't know how much you know about these guys. Obviously, RFK's just joined the party, but you know about Curtis Yarvin and Peter Thiel and Blake Masters and Vance. You know about these guys. I mean, they're really hooked into some powerful. So I mean, big money, obviously, but some powerful ideas as well. Like they really know what they're doing. You know Curtis Yarvin? Do you know this guy?
Yeah, I'm familiar with. I've done shows on Thiel actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I need to check that out. I mean, they have a philosophy, I guess, is what I'm saying. They actually have a plan. So they're pretty convincing. Like I said, if I was politically oriented, but I'm just not, because I mean, in this way, I'm very Christian. I think that the only solution is a spiritual solution, and the problem goes back to the serpent in the garden. Right? I don't think politics are going to solve these problems, because I think Satan is prince of this world. Right? That's my simple version. But if I didn't have that outlook, I'd be kind of seduced potentially by this, because they seem so competent, like the Trump camp. They actually seem competent. So yeah, I'm wondering if they're actually being centered now, and that's going to be, the next tier of this control system. And Musk, obviously, I left Musk out.
Right. Oh yeah. These guys are all kind of on the same board, but yeah. And you want to talk about how the right and left, kind of conservative, liberal terms may not apply, because those guys are more libertarian and more attuned to maybe even the occult on the right than you would think. Like I just did a show last night called Our Occulted Tech Overlords. And a lot of these guys have ideas from Blavatsky and Alice Bailey. And they don't believe in a heaven, like a spiritual heaven, but their heaven is the stars. So they have a material kind of view of this kind of heavenly future. But I think that, I don't think the deep state is that deep. So I don't ascribe to that term, because the state is big enough, and to me it's obvious. I don't know why I know why people use it, but to me, the shooting of Trump that happened on July 13th was the state. It's obvious to me that it involved the Secret Service, FBI, which goes up to DHS, and the cover up and the lack of information about everything. It's pretty obvious that the state rejects Trump. But the ones, the kind of tech overlords, the oligarchs, a lot of these guys are, I think, on board with Trump, and supporting him. Musk is supporting Trump financially. Thiel, Vance and his network, and kind of they're kind of like the new kind of intellectual engine involving tech and kind of new ideas, I think. And the left is obviously incompetent and corrupt. I mean, there's so much money missing all over the left. I mean, it's just like a kleptocracy. It's a blatant kleptocracy. It's not even arguable. So that's really where the hope is, really, for the future, is really kind of these younger guys taking the helm, because these old kind of like gerontocratic goofs that are just like parasites in the body politic here have literally taken sort of cliff. So
yeah, but what kind of hope is it, though? I mean, if it's a transhumanist brain link,
right. Yeah, you should listen to this guy Andreessen, who's a VC guy who was on the board of HP. Actually, it's interesting because the tech guy over there who just supposedly died on a water spout, Berna or Blake, or forgot his last name, but like he was on this company Autonomy that HP bought for like $8 billion. That's supposedly a lot of fraud, but I think it was found fraud in the UK, and they haven't really sentenced him. But he was the one who died, and then his associate died in a car crash same week. But it ties back to Andreessen, who came up on his website, which you could say, which is this techno-optimist manifesto. And you have to read it because he gives a lot of it away. He references Nick Land, like of all people. He references Land and Nietzsche, like long quotes from Nietzsche, Prometheus, Frankenstein. So it's interesting that you brought that up, this kind of like brain, transhuman thing. These guys are like literally writing. This was something to Techno-Optimist Manifesto. Interesting word choice, right? Manifesto. Was just published in 2023, so it's fairly recent. But these guys all overlap. That's what's interesting. So you may see them in your mind's eye like as separate entities, but Thiel and Musk go way back to PayPal, like in Palo Alto. And then a lot of these guys cross-pollinate with their investments and things like that. J.D. Vance was in San Francisco after he got done with Yale Law School as a venture capitalist, right? Which is all these guys have. They either are venture capitalists or part of the VC network. A lot of government contracts too, which is also another story. But it is interesting, their kind of philosophy. It's not Christian.
No, definitely not Christian, but it's confusing because, I mean, it's not surprising it'd be confusing because I imagine, and Curtis Yarvin even is very specific about this, if they're just trying to assume power, then they'll use whatever rhetoric works. But I was going to say there's a very clear contradiction because they do seem to be techno-optimists, as you put it. So, and they are technocrats. I mean, if you're a Peter Thiel, you're a billionaire. Musk, you're the richest man in the world. Obviously, it's the definition of a technocrat, really. But they have Ted Kaczynski, as one of their, so they call him Uncle Ted, right? And certainly Ted Kaczynski would not have been in favor of any kind of technology, right? So as I say, whatever works for them, I guess it's this mishmash.
Well, you have to convince people that what you're doing and what's making you wealthy is the best for everybody, right? So that's kind of what this techno-optimist kind of came across. It's almost like the trickle-down theory from the techno people, where this technology will pervade everybody and take people magically out of poverty, and which is still here, even with all this high-tech stuff, right? So.
Well, I think Yarvin was quite explicit that the poor people will just stick them in front of virtual, or we'll just give them virtual goggles and they can just sort of write with intravenous feed or whatever.
Yeah, Meta. You can Zuckerberg them and turn them into zombies, right?
We should.
But I mean, it's really serious, because if Trump does win, that's going to be kind of the new culture that's going to come over, and the left will never, the revolutionary spirit, like you mentioned, they'll just fight the whole 4 years, just like they did when he was in power from 2016 to 20, whatever scams and Russian collusion and any scam they can come up, that they're really just good at playing really good scams and never getting anything done.
Sure.
Their energy is non-growth. It really is something else. Like, their energy is just on fake propaganda and wasting time. And
Yarbin's convinced, or he's claimed to be convinced, he can just he can cure all these left, right, and just sort of convince them, the blue brigade, that it's not so bad, having a red dictatorship. It won't actually be that bad for them, and they just have to come and work for the new regime, right? Which I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends how ideologically possessed the individuals are. But the other thing is the oppositional. If you have an oppositional identity or an oppositional kind of structure, which generally political systems are oppositional, scapegoating is really central to consolidation of power, then it can just make you stronger anyway. Like if there is a kind of uprising, that can justify and strengthen the resolve of the new regime. It's got an internal enemy, right?
Good point. I think Trump 2.0 will be a lot different than the first Trump. He was weak and didn't really have his hand on all of the levers of power in the United States, which there are many. He just wasn't an experienced politician. He didn't understand how these vipers actually operate. That they could say one thing to him and do another. He didn't see. It's kind of like almost like Nicholas II with the Potemkin villages and stuff like that, where people just told Trump what he wanted to hear. He's such a narcissist. I don't think he really understood that some of these guys in the FBI or the CIA would be working against him. His entire term as president.
Well, maybe that was his initiation, right? Yeah, they had to pass all those tests, and they're like, "Okay, you're still alive." And then the assassination thing, whatever that was. I mean, I'm not.
I think it was an assassination. I think that they plotted it out. They had in the right spot. I think that it was very much intentional. Like these are the assassination in America are all. There's always an element of the security who disappears or doesn't.
Yeah, I know, but they always succeed, Bill, or at least, well, I mean,
let me explain why it didn't succeed, because this is my opinion. But so Lincoln, his bodyguard disappears and goes drinking, and then Booth comes in and shoots him in the back of the head. And it's true conspiracy, right? Booth and 7 people were hanged, and they tried to kill Seward and all these other people. So it was really almost like a small scale assault in D.C. It was planned to be that way. And then obviously JFK, Dallas, November 22nd, 1963, you can actually see videos of the Secret Service kind of pulling back from the car before they went into the shooting gallery, like he was not going to come out of there alive. Trump, July 13th, 2024, in Butler, PA, they had everything set up. So they had this kind of side shot. They had the patsy. Oh, they always have some kind of patsy. Crooks is the new Oswald. I think the real shooters shooting suppressed bullets like you can't hear. They're subsonic, silenced. I mean, I think professionals have shown that. But I think when they were kind of testing it out, that Trump was going to be a side shot into his head. So I think that before July 13th, they were probably saying the target wasn't going to be a forward-on shot, but a side shot to his head. What Trump did and saved his life is he turned at the moment of when the shooting went off, and he looked up at this ceiling and kept moving his head. So that's why it glanced. It was a real bullet. They're real bullets. I mean, this comparatory guy.
Well, sure, I know. I mean, but that's the official version. But I mean, if you plan
I don't think that's the official version. I think that's my version. I think that they tried to kill him.
No, the official version is he moved his head, right? And that's why he didn't get killed. But I'm saying if they plan an assassination attempt, obviously they have to be prepared for head movements. That's like the one of the first.
I think so. I think that they expected him to be facing forward. I think that's what which he wasn't.
But still, I mean, you have to admit that it was extremely incompetent. If he didn't get shot because he moved his head, like, right, there's not going to be a very acceptable excuse when you go to your handlers and say, sorry, he moved, right?
I would be terrified if I was involved in that shooting, because those guys might already be dead. Like, we don't know.
Well, sure, absolutely. But, well, I mean, I guess we just don't know. And I mean, my take, because I wrote about it, I didn't write about it at this stage because I just don't know. But it just seemed that it so benefited Trump, the whole thing, although admittedly it seems like it's been downplayed. And then it seemed like there's been a shift since then. Now, I guess you could say that there was a shift because they failed, but you'd think this hypothetical they If at first you don't succeed, try again, right? And maybe we'll find it. Maybe he will get killed, and then that will definitely confirm your theory. But I say if he gets elected and there is a Trump 2.0, that would confirm my theory that actually this was part of the preparation, like because they've definitely been scapegoating him by all these legal charges and all the rest of it. But I don't know what you think about Alex Jones. But to me, Alex Jones, I don't trust the guy. And the fact that he got deplatformed for a while and persecuted, to me, because you could see that's given him a lot more credibility, to me that looks like that was all part of the Alex Jones op. So I just
feel why isn't he arrested? He was there on J6, right? So he's there. Like a lot of people got arrested not even going into the Capitol. So why is he arrested when there are others still arresting people? It's unbelievable. 3 or 4 years later, they're still going after people.
So you're not a fan of Alex Jones then?
I've had my suspicions of him for a long time, and there's a lot to be suspicious about. Some of the stuff that he doesn't talk about too, like so, it's almost like he's operating as a kind of a informational sphincter for his own group. And, I don't know. He's gotten some things right. So,
well, sure. But I mean, they have to have good things to offer, otherwise it's not a honeypot. I mean, the obvious question with Alex Jones is, how come he is still alive? Also, if he's stirring things up. But I mean, rather than stay on the specifics, that I want to just ask you more about the deep state thing, because it's not a term that I use unless I feel I have to, because whatever, it's been coined outside of my own researches, and I don't just want to take it as a hand-me-down thing, but it's become a very popular term with QAnon and all that also. So it's fishy, but the idea that these terms are difficult here, but there are groups and agendas and interests that transcend the bipartisan system, that are transnational. We could say globalism, but that's limiting it too much, and that span generations. That idea is one I subscribe to. I think I've seen it with the Fabian Society. Somebody like Henry Kissinger, you can see he moved from different. Right, he was around and powerful influence, regardless of who won the election. Right, so clearly there are levels at which we don't really see what they're up to, but it seems that they manage to use whatever events transpire, and whoever gets into power, they seem to manage to use it to further the long-term agenda. So that was a very unwieldy way of putting it. I just don't want to reduce it to the reptilians or the Council of Foreign, right? I don't want to try and...
CFR is part of it.
Sure, CFR, I mean, that is an easy go-to. I mean, something above the WEF and the Bilderbergs, it does seem that predates. Maybe it goes back thousands of years if we get into secret societies, but certainly goes back several hundred years. I don't mention the Illuminati either. So to me, that's the real deep state, quote unquote, or what people are talking about when they try to talk about the deep state. So what's your opinion on that?
100%. I totally agree with you. I think that I did a show called The Pilgrim Society in the City of London, whose patron is King Charles III. And it's like a who's who of like British, lords and people from Chatham House. But they're from the UK. But the US side is all these old families involving Kissinger as well as in there, Dulles, Rockefeller, Schiff, Whitney, like these huge power blocks. And I think that they had their oligarchical interests that and the politicians to them are their kind of servitors. And if they don't do what they want, they subvert them. And I think it's very evident in a lot. And the people say the CIA, but these guys are the CIA. So behind the CIA are all these families, right? So you don't get, and the CIA became after World War II really kind of like the fourth branch of the U.S. government in reality, in effect. So I think it was a way for those old families, let's call it the deep state. It's really not. They really are excellent at what would be called private diplomacy. So you have the public diplomacy of a Kissinger or somebody's Secretary of State, but these guys are making arrangements in the Atlanticist Anglo-American sphere through these like club networks where they know each other. So I think that would be called the deep state. I think it's easier. I've had the luxury of really researching a lot of this stuff. So for people who have taken their slop from the legacy media or the corporate media, these things aren't as obvious to them. But for me, it's like, this is the real history, Dulles and JFK assassination and all that stuff.
Right.
Those interests, very powerful, very skilled, very best schools, a lot of skull and bones, Yale, pedigrees. For me, that's it. So just like you said, like all that stuff. And I think Pilgrim Society is kind of the insight into going back 1,000 years, because you have the literal temple church in the city of London that was consecrated by Heraclitus, who was the head of the church in Rome, the Holy Sepulchre, of which the temple church is based on, the Holy Sepulchre. And that is the Templars going all the way up. You have Rosslyn Chapel and all this stuff. And the master of the temple is a member of the Pilgrim Society. So he's hobnobbing with American elites as well. So those are kind of the secret things.
So what's the connection between the Templars and the Pilgrim Society exactly?
The city of London, like you probably remember when, the city of London was kind of the financial center of the world, really. I mean,
some people say it still is.
Okay. I think it might have kind of declined with the advent of the U.S. after World War II, but certainly during the British Empire, all of the De Beers is headquartered there. And what was the other kind of one company that really gave insurance policies for anybody? They would figure it out. But anyway, the connection to the Templars is that's the first international banking community.
Sure.
You could go you didn't have to carry your gold from the Crusader place in Jerusalem to London. You just took a check and they would honor it in London and give you your gold, so you can get waylaid by bandits and stuff like that. So that the temple actually was kind of a bank, the temple church back 1,000 years ago, and it became the head of the inns. There's 2 inns of court, the inner and outer inns, of which there are only 4 inns of court that you have to be a barrister in the UK. So the temple is connected to the Templars, and this one head, I can't remember his name offhand, but he is part of the Pilgrim Society. So he's a legacy. He's basically, as a master of the temple church, he's basically has that pedigree going back thousands of years, going back to the Templars.
What is the Pilgrim Society, though? Because I'm not familiar.
Okay. The Pilgrim Society was set up in 1902 and 1903. Its intent was to enrich the relationships between America and the U.S. And it was very much
England, the US.
Right. So St. James's Court is in London, right? So that's where the ambassadors to the UK from the US would go, or all over the world, right? So it was always involving the ambassadorships. The Pilgrim Society always involved the ambassadorships of the US and UK. So they were always made honorary members, and they would give speeches at the Pilgrim Society. And they will only be at the most elite and wealthy place, the Waldorf Astoria in the U.S., and I forgot some of the names of the swanky hotels in London. So they would have meetings, but they also would invite. It would be on invite only, but it was always the elite. So it was always people involved in the elite and who were English or ethnically Anglo. But they would make decisions. So they made decisions on like Panama, the Spanish-American War, and their membership is almost kind of like the people have divulged that they're involved in the Pilgrim Society, but they don't publish a membership list, much like the Bohemian Club.
Right.
So it's kind of like a Bohemian Club, but it's transnational, and it's really kind of that's what they call it, the special relationship. It's, I think, one of the core aspects of the special relationship between the U.S. and the UK.
Right.
That these are the elites, and the king is literally, King Charles III is literally, you can go to their website. King Charles III is literally the patron of the Pilgrim Society. And the guy who was the head of the Pilgrim Society, Lord they call Jock Stirrup is his last name, was literally the holder of the sword of state. So all of this ancient, old term UK regalia, he was holding the sword of state when King Charles III was last year, when he was became king, right? Which was strange too, because he waited kind of like 9 months after his mother died to kind of go through the formality. But yeah, it's just incredible. Really, the membership lists of these of the Pilgrim Society is mind blowing. It's really just power structure. It's really
so there wasn't a membership list.
There were people that put it together. There might be a membership list somewhere, but these were people who divulged they were members.
Right.
So the total membership, to my knowledge, is not public of who's in it now. But there is a membership list that's public, at least for the UK version, at least that I saw on their website, that shows the board of directors, not the members. But the board of directors are shocking enough, because it has the head of KPMG, Citigroup, like these huge international banks are sitting on the board of directors of Pilgrim Society. It's a huge guy. And there's another guy who's a PR specialist from the US who's on there. So they kind of see that kind of Bernaysian interest in that. But I do think it's kind of like a mutual influence group. I think predominantly benefiting the UK actually after World War II, but maybe it wasn't the same.
Right.
But they only hold things in London and New York City. So it's kind of like the Gilded Age, the pre-World War II Gilded Age kind of groups. But yeah, it's I think that is kind of like really the power behind the state, right? So the CIA, they always say, oh, the CIA is a boogeyman, CIA, which they're right. But what's behind the CIA? Is there something behind the CIA? And yes, there is, and that's the kind of Atlantic Anglo-American aristocracy.
Well, CIA is just one of them. I mean, the intelligence community in the US is huge. The CIA is just one tentacle. But yeah, I mean,
it's probably the predominant, like the most forceful aspect of the intelligence community is invested in the CIA.
I was wondering, it's just the one that gets the blame for everything, right? Because the NSA, you don't hear much about the NSA. We did with Snowden, I suppose, but generally speaking, you don't. But they're way bigger, aren't they, the NSA? Of course, these intelligence organizations may be occult secret societies, just dressed up as bureaucracies, right?
When the NSA was signed in 1947, very kind of a potent date in world history was that year. But Truman signed it, and behind him are like 6 guys, and 4 of them are members of Skull and Bones. So, and he regretted it. So, like after Kennedy got shot, like a week later, Truman wrote this op-ed piece and said, "I never should have given the authority to the CIA. It was a huge mistake," because he understood right away that they were the ones involved in the killing of Kennedy. So it's very telling. It's kind of an interesting arc of Truman from 47 to 63. And the kind of stuff they got away with for those 16 years on a global scale, the British Empire had to have looked at with awe and envy, like that the CIA could pull off all this stuff. Maybe the Empire was good at it too, but carried on the tradition of just overthrowing country after overthrowing country.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think it's the aggressive wing of this. What we're going to talk about this transnational secret society, because the Fabian Society. I mean, have you looked into them much?
We talked about it. You and I talked about it. I know that. Oh, by the way, another member of the John Major is a member of the Pilgrim Society, and I think that. What was the guy who was a member of the Fabian Society who's also a PM? He was, under the Iraq War. I think he was a former member.
Blair?
Yeah, Blair.
Yeah.
Who would know to be a Fabian member. But I think we talked about the Fabian Society in like one of them.
Well, we did, but I mean, that was probably because I wrote the book about it, but I was just wondering if in your own trails, independently, you haven't come across it much yet. Because I'm just thinking now that... because clearly they've been hugely influential, including in the US. I think it was Woodrow Wilson and the 14 points. You know, that was Wilson, I think. What was I trying to say? Yeah, well, they imported their their ideas. They call themselves permeators, so they had ways and means of infiltrating society. Obviously, in Britain, that was where they really got deep in, because they created the Labour Party. So, but through the arts and through the education would be two of the main things, the sciences as well. But so the education system in the US, I would say you could find evidence that it was infiltrated by the Fabian Society in those early days, and actually woke can be traced right back. I mean, we talk about cultural Marxism, right? That's a trendy term for the last 10 years, but Fabianism is I would say is more accurate, it's more specific in terms of an actual group. So yeah, but they seem to be more involved with cultural engineering, with shaping ideologies, beliefs, and so on. Whereas the CIA were talking about the aggressive arm of this conspiracy, right? That actually just goes in and conquers and colonizes.
Resources and just anti-communist and just ferocious. Really, the U.S. before 1980, whatever, well, really up until the Iraq War, just a ferocious overthrower, if not subverter, of countries all around the world. I mean, you hear of the overthrows and the revolutions, but you don't hear of the election stealing and buying off of politicians and some of these other things that they were up to.
Mm-hmm. So, Anglo-American Empire, I mean, is a term that is used. Is it sufficient though? Should it be Anglo-American Israeli Empire? Because we don't want to leave the Jews out, right? Because of the international bankers, the Rothschild. Like, what do you think in terms of a designator that at least isn't too, theoretical? Like, because you talk about the CFR and these different things, but as an overarching term, how close do you think that Anglo-American, maybe Israeli empire is to what we're talking about?
Pretty close.
Yeah,
pretty close. I think the Israelis really met their stride and really got a lot more powerful since the third millennium. I think they were really focused on securing the realm of Israel after 48 to 2001. But I think their international policies, you talk about an influence op. Like, I think their influence op on the U.S. is incredible. I mean, it's probably one of the greatest political, diplomatic, intel operations in human history. You have to see it because it's not that big of a political group, but their capacity to infiltrate the U.S. and run its foreign policy is unparalleled in human history. Maybe there was something like it in the U.S. doing it to other countries, or the U.K. kind of, gearing the U.S. towards the World War I and World War II. Like, those were huge operations, of which Crowley was part of it, right? Crowley was part of getting the U.S. into World War I. So, right now, Netanyahu's trying to get the U.S. to destroy Iran, a huge country, 80 million people. Like, it's brazen. It's just incredible. Like, we're really kind of setting the pieces together for the Armageddon. Like, it's not a joke. Like, that people say, no, there's no way Armageddon would happen. It's a fantasy. It's some kind of prophecy. And you're like, guys, China's looking at this. India's looking at the Middle East. The U.S. is looking at the Middle East. Russia's looking at the Middle East. So to say that, I would say that I think the Jewish or the Zion, it's so strange to use the term Zion because all it's been is war. Like, there should be some other term. Like, you talk about the deep state term. Like, because they haven't had peace since its foundation. Like, really, it's just horrible. Like, they fought the Jews have just fought, and the Arabs all the way up to 48, the Holocaust, pogroms in Russia. It's just like they just can't. It's just like the tenacity. But anyway, to get to your point, I think that the foreign policy skills and I think the intelligence skills are something people will write about. AIPAC and the ability for the Israelis to take vast amounts of American dollars, put them into the building of their project, and then launder it back to the U.S. by buying American politicians is brazen. It's like it's something that never hurt. Like, why doesn't anybody put a stop to this? Because the politicians are getting paid off from the tax dollars they get. It's probably a cyclical thing that happens out of Ukraine as well. So I think that the Jew, I mean, a lot of this stuff is really kind of like run by Jewish, like the whole Ukraine war, like we talked about earlier, is like a lot of Jews in the Biden administration. But a lot of American foreign policy really is kind of like maybe this whole Russian thing is some kind of ancestral hatred for the Russians that goes back to 1905 and the pogroms and all this stuff.
Yeah, that's the whole can of worms. I'm still trying to figure out how to define.
It's a valid question, Jason. I think it's
these terms, because maybe Zionist is better than Israel, because Israel is just this tiny little country. And the thing about Zionism is it was co-created by the British Empire as an instrument, and of course securing Israel as a power base in the Middle East, as far as I can see, that was the whole plan. They didn't really care about giving the Jews a homeland. It's a convenient place to have control over that portion of the planet for the oil. And
look at the Sykes-Picot Agreement. It was deliberately, those lines were drawn to create tensions and fighting in Middle East. So these people support, like the perfidious Albion supporting Israel. Is that, and you know what they ensure? They've been fighting from the beginning. Like, is the Arab-Israeli war. I mean, it's not funny.
Yeah.
If you're kind of like the chieftain or whatever, kingpin, right? And you're moving pieces on the grand chessboard, and you want these guys fighting forever, they did it right. They were right, because they are doing it.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, there's one point of view as a guy, Richard Poe. I mean, he wouldn't talk to me once he found out that I was also wanting to question real Jewish influences in world affairs, but his thesis is how the British Empire created Bolshevism and blamed the Jews, right? Scapegoating the Jews, but I think that's too simple, because I think you're involving Jewish people, and there's Jewish bankers behind it, so it's not either or, but it's both and. So yeah, is Israel influencing the US, or is it just rather that the Israel is a tool or an extension of the US power, or British power via US power, right? It's right, which is which? I mean, it's both, kind of both. Right. But the thing is it's not, Israel was not in the interests of ordinary average Jews, clearly, any more than Arabs, not really. And I mean, half of Israelis aren't even Jewish. There's Russians, there's Ukrainians, it's a whole mishmash. But then it gets even more complicated, because what is a Jew? I mean, I was writing about this for several weeks at my Substack. Nobody really knows what a Jew is. Is it somebody who practices Judaism? Is it somebody whose mother's Jewish? Is it somebody who lives in Israel? Is it a Zionist? There's all these different parts, right? But is it religion or is it ethnic? Is the number one thing. So I think there is a trap in here in identifying the Jewish influence, because it's not quite that simple. It's just that you can't, it's tricky, because you can't not name it, you can't not talk about it, because it's there, it's part of the landscape, as I say. But as soon as we name it, and you talk about the Jews here or there, it starts getting fuzzy, right? Because they're not just ordinary Jews, right? They're more than just Jews. And they're probably almost certainly not practicing Judaism anyway, right? So
I think in Israel alone, you have different, they have words in Hebrew for your level of practitioner of Jews. So you are an ultra Orthodox, which is your religious and ethnically Jew. And then at the very bottom, I forgot these terms. And at the very bottom is somebody who's Jewish ethnically but doesn't practice. Right. So it's more variegated and more nuanced than just kind of labeling, are you Jewish? And if you identify, then that's it. But I talked to a guy who was pretty stridently Jewish, and he said, once you say Jesus is the Messiah, you're not Jewish. So I think you can say clearly that that's one element that makes you un-Jewish. So
Well, that's interesting. So that could be a definition of a Jew if you don't accept Jesus.
But Jews for Jesus rejects that position, right? So they think they're Jewish, and I mean, he's really the Jewish Messiah. Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. I mean, in my opinion, they've always had a messianic tradition of looking for messiahs. They've had fake ones, in my opinion.
Well, that, I mean,
to the throne, but really, Jesus is Jewish. You can see his legacy or his genealogy right there. First Matthew, it's right there. So that it's real.
Sure, yeah, sure. I mean, Jesus incarnated or Christ incarnated in a Jewish body. Sure, I have no problem with that.
But saying Jew, I mean, even it's just like you said, just saying Jewish isn't enough. There's too many. Just saying Christian really isn't enough. Like I could be a Christian who thinks that aliens are, representation of angels or something weird like that.
Absolutely.
So it's much more different. But there is an international Jew, this kind of negative, pejorative view, like the international Jew. It's people who identify Jewish all over the world. But there's international Catholicism, international Orthodoxy, Islam. So it's saying kind of internet, like it's kind of a joke. Like, come on, it's just all these religions have an international character now. So,
what about
similar interests?
What about Sabbatai then? Because Sabbatarianism is getting a lot of circulation now. I mean, because even Candace Owens apparently is talking about the Sabbatarians. It's possible that because they were Jews, and he claimed to be the Jewish Messiah in 1666. Obviously, he was lucky to be born at the time that he could do it right then. There are probably Gentiles who are Sabbatarians. I mean, based on the philosophy of Sabbatarianism, which is basically do all the nasty, evil shit you can, because that will accelerate the coming of the Messiah, the real Messiah, not Jesus, in their mind. Obviously, that would be a great rationale for, well, what can we say? I mean, the pedophycracy obviously was McGowan's term, but it does seem, we haven't talked about today, it does seem central to this power clique that's basically taken over the planet, and maybe had already done so in Jesus's time. They do seem to enjoy sexual perversion and cruelty and sadism, basically really evil stuff. So the Sabbatarianism actually has a philosophical, as does Crowleyanity, has a philosophical rationale for this.
Yeah.
So I think that at least two things get mixed up there. It's obviously got factually, historically Jewish bankers who have massive amounts of control. Then you've got Judaism as the rejected Christ as the Messiah. And so whatever that entailed, there's definitely a kind of doubling down in that, I think, because they're trying to hang on to an old religion that Christ basically completed. It's done, he fulfilled the law now, whatever, how we're going to interpret that. And then you got the Sabbatarians who are whatever the hell they are. I mean, right? They've got this occult kind of transgression philosophy.
Right. Which is kind of overlaps with Crowleyism, right? Like the transgression is your path to fulfillment or whatever, I guess.
Liberation for Crowley, basically, in that, because we see how that's trickled into the culture, more than trickle, really. It went from a trickle to a tidal wave. That's what the culture we live in is, freedom through transgression.
No doubt. I gotta wrap it up. I gotta run off. I got something to do. I gotta be somewhere. I gotta be in San Francisco at 10.
Oh, we didn't even get to Hitler. I was going to talk.
Well, we'll do another one on Hitler. Maybe we'll do another one on the Pilgrim Society. I'll bring you up to speed on all my knowledge on the Pilgrim Society. It's really interesting.
Right.
Really impressive people, like really incredible stuff.
Have you read?
Was the beginning of the RRIA, right? The Royal Institute of International Affairs.
I've definitely come across Chatham House. They're in Vice Kings. Have you read Foucault's Pendulum? Umberto Eco.
A long time ago. I need to read it again.
Because he traces. It's what?
It's basically, I think the chapter systems are based on the Kabbalah.
Yeah. I mean, I say, I don't know that, but it's in Foucault's Pendulum, the Kabbalah is certainly central, but he traces it to the Templars anyway.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
They're still Templar. I was in Italy a couple of years ago, and in San Gimignano, they literally still have a Templar outpost. So you can see like on the Pilgrim's Trail from London that goes through Europe, goes through Italy on its way to, the Holy Land. They literally had like a stop. San Gimignano was like a
where there's a cash machine. If you want, there's a cash machine, an ancient cash machine.
Ancient ATM, right?
It reminds me actually one last point. When you talk about the Templars and how they turn the temple into a bank, maybe that's because that scene in the Gospel really stands out when Jesus loses his shit with the merchants in the temple and gets out a whip, right? It's the only time Jesus is violent. So maybe that's related. Like that, those were early Templars, or that was a trend that was already in evidence back then to turn the temple into a bank.
The temple was a bank. The ancient Second Temple was a bank. Underneath that were huge chambers.
Okay, so but Jesus was very upset about it, is my point. So he must have foreseen that this was a very bad idea.
You've changed. What did he say? It was you've turned this into the money changers into a house of something. I forgot what it was. Den of thieves, brood of vipers. How can any of you escape damnation?
Because that can't not serve Mammon and God, right? You can't serve two masters. Anyway,
apparently that was the tradition back then. Is there were guys who literally like were funked over the temple. Bennett told me this. Who I talked to knew more about it. But apparently there was like almost kind of like a mob. I'm not going to say mob, but there were guys who were part of the temple who got a little piece out of all the stuff that was exchanged. So their incentive was to kind of sell the doves and sell all these kind of implements for the temple services so that they could get their money out of it. So.
Right. Well, this is part of the theory about Jews and why they've ended up becoming pariahs is because they were a bit circular, but because they weren't allowed to do most of the trades that would give them too much influence in society, they had to become moneylenders.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, it's Merchant of Venice or something.
Right. Well, hopefully you won't get attacked for this podcast, but it sounds like you used to. I never got to that question. Like, what do you keep getting attacked for? But
I get attacked for everything. I don't care. I mean, it's fine. I'm willing to discuss it. If you're Jewish, call me up. Let's have a talk. I don't mind. I'm not really anti-Jewish. I'm actually strangely pro-Israel. I'm probably anti-Netanyahu. I kind of have a view of like the way people see the Old Testament of like good and bad leaders. Like Israel had like Jezebel and Saul and some of these other people. So I think it's like the past is present. Like,
but that wasn't Israel. I mean, it's confusing. Yeah, Israel is the Anglo-American power base in the Middle East that kills a bunch of Palestinians, right? So you can't really be pro.
It's high tax dollars. I mean, the U.S. tax dollars are financing those bombs and the stuff. So it's disgusting. Like, I'm not on board with the genocide at all. And there are other ways to solve that problem, but they wanted them dead. So
I'm not going to let you get away now because. But
I have to go. I got to go.
You absolutely have to go.
Yeah. I gotta get ready and I gotta get on the road. So
all right.
Well, the next time until
we'll have to end on a cliffhanger then.
Yeah, that's good. It'll be good. It'll be good for the audience.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Jason. Good
talking. Yeah.
Send me the audio. Will you email me the audio? You can download it once we're done. Just to
sure.
All right. Cool.
Will do.
All right. Thanks for the invite. Good to talk.
Bye.